I came home to an empty house. No, not empty in the sense that there were no chairs or curtains, but empty in a way that crushed my chest the moment I stepped in. The silence was unbearable, the kind that told me something had been ripped away. A suitcase was gone from the corner of our bedroom. The closet door left slightly ajar with hangers swaying, mocking me with the absence of my wife's dresses. The scent of her perfume still lingered in the air, but she was gone. I already knew, even before I checked my phone and saw her message. The one where she told me she had found someone better. Someone who could give her more than I ever could. Someone who made her feel alive in a way I never had. It was brutal, direct, and so unlike the woman I had married. Or maybe I had never really known her at all. I sank into the couch, staring at the ceiling, trying to process it. There had been no warning signs. No fights. No late nights wondering where she was. Just a sudden, clean break like I was nothing more than an obstacle in her path to something grander. Anna had always liked nice things, but I had thought, no, I had believed, our love meant more to her than wealth. Clearly I was wrong. And then Jane showed up. She came a few hours later, knocking lightly on the door like she had expected this. Like she had been waiting for her moment. She looked at me with those pitying eyes, and I hated that it felt good to have someone there. Someone who wasn't gloating over my downfall. She sat beside me, her presence warm and steady, and told me she had warned me about Anna's ambitions. That she had always thought Anna wanted more than I could provide. That she had tried to tell me, but I never listened. At that moment, Jane became my anchor. I let her pull me out of the pit of my loss. Let her words soothe the rawness of the betrayal. She didn't push, didn't rush me to move on. She just stayed and I let her. I was too numb to question why. Days turned into weeks, and Jane remained by my side. Not in an obvious, suffocating way, but always present, always available. She brought over food, straightened up my place when I didn't have the energy to care, and listened when I needed to talk. I convinced myself it was harmless, that it was just friendship, just kindness. But kindness had a way of slipping past defenses, especially when it came with warm hands and a soft smile. She never spoke badly of Anna. Not directly, but in small, careful ways, she planted seeds that took root in my mind. Little reminders of how Anna had always wanted more, how she had dismissed my dreams, how she had treated me as if I were never enough. I didn't want to believe it at first, but Jane's words were like a slow poison, reshaping my memories. I started seeing my marriage in a different light, not as a love lost, but as a burden lifted. Then, one evening, Jane kissed me. I should have pulled away, should have stopped her, but I didn't. Not because I loved her. No, love had nothing to do with it. It was something else. A need, a hunger, a deep, simmering anger I hadn't acknowledged until that moment. Jane didn't love me either. I knew that now, but she wanted me, and that was enough. That was the night everything changed. That was the night Jane moved from being my comfort to my weapon. She whispered that Anna would regret leaving me, that she would see what she had lost. And somewhere deep inside me, that idea took hold. Jane wasn't just helping me heal. She was helping me get even. And I let her because revenge had never tasted so sweet. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that my revenge was already playing itself out. And Anna, blind to the truth, was walking straight into her own destruction. Anna learned soon enough that wealth did not equate to love. The man she had left me for was everything she had dreamt of at first. Expensive vacations, designer gifts, fancy dinners at restaurants she had only seen in magazines. He made her feel special, at least until the illusion cracked. She was not his partner. She was his pastime. A trophy for display, nothing more. When his attention wavered, when she was no longer new and exciting, he discarded her without hesitation. One morning, she woke up to find herself locked out of his penthouse, her belongings neatly packed and waiting in the lobby. No explanation, no goodbye, just a cold, humiliating end to what she thought was her fairy tale. And so, defeated and desperate, she came back to the only home she had ever truly known, ours. She expected remorse. She expected open arms. What she found was something else entirely. Jane answered the door. Anna froze, her mind struggling to process the sight. Jane stood in the doorway, wearing a robe that belonged to me, her hair tousled as if she had just woken up from my bed. The smug satisfaction in her eyes was unmistakable, but she masked it with a faux concern. Anna tried to step inside, but Jane blocked her path. She told her, in a voice dripping with manufactured pity, that things had changed, that I had moved on, that I was happy. Anna didn't believe her. She pushed past Jane, storming into the house that still smelled like her, only to find undeniable proof of her replacement. My shoes by the door, a half-empty coffee cup on the counter, one she knew I had never used when we were together. The subtle, yet overwhelming presence of Jane everywhere. Then I walked in. Anna turned to me, eyes wide, searching for any sign that this wasn't real, that this was some kind of mistake. But I gave her nothing. I simply watched as the truth sank into her bones, as the realization twisted inside her like a knife. I expected her to cry, to beg, but she only stood there, swallowing down the devastation she had brought upon herself. And for the first time, I saw my wife for what she truly was, not a victim, not a woman wronged, but a gambler who had lost her biggest bet. She left without another word, and I let her go. But the game wasn't over. Not yet. Anna was gone, but the weight of her betrayal had lifted. I should have felt triumphant. I should have felt like I had won. Instead, something gnawed at me, a whisper of unease that grew louder with each passing day. Jane was different now. It started with small things. She had moved in seamlessly, taking up space as if she had always belonged. My home, once mine alone, now bore her touches, her scented candles, her silk robes, her voice humming in the mornings like she was the rightful queen of the castle. At first, I let it slide. After all, she had been there when I needed someone. But the more I watched her, the more I saw through the act. She was possessive. She started making decisions for me, assuming her place not as my partner, but as my keeper. My nights out with friends became fewer. My phone calls were subtly monitored. If I spoke about moving on, about taking things slow, she would laugh it off, dismissing my words like they were trivial. Then I found the messages. Jane had been talking to Anna for months before she left me. Not warnings, not concern, manipulation, guiding her toward leaving, making sure she saw greener pastures elsewhere, planting doubt. And when Anna was gone, Jane had slipped into the vacant space like it had all been preordained. My stomach turned as I scrolled through their conversations. Jane had never been my savior. She had been my executioner, carefully orchestrating my downfall so she could step into the aftermath. I was just another conquest to her. Betrayal breeds something sharp and unforgiving. I had once been a man who believed in love and trust, but now all I had was clarity and the perfect plan. I didn't confront Jane. No, that would have been too easy. Instead, I let her believe she had one. I played the role of the devoted man, the grateful survivor of heartbreak who had found solace in her arms. And while she celebrated her victory, I built my escape. Anna had gambled and lost. But Jane thought she had rigged the game in her favor. She had no idea I was about to rewrite the rules. First, I drained the bank accounts. Not all at once, just enough to make her wonder, enough to make her nervous. Then, I changed the locks. Then, the final blow, I let her see the messages. The ones she had sent to Anna. The ones that laid bare her scheme. The ones that exposed her as the villain she was. I left my phone open on the counter, casually, knowing she would read them. When she did, her face went pale. And that's when I spoke, my voice calm, measured. "Did you really think you could play me?" She stammered, searching for an excuse, a justification. But there was none. She had built her kingdom on deception, and now it was crumbling. "I want you out," I said, finality in my tone. "Tonight." She tried to plead, to argue, but I had learned my lesson. Betrayal only wins when you give it power, and I was done giving mine away. As she packed her things, I watched in silence, letting the weight of her own downfall settle onto her shoulders. She had thought she was the mastermind, but in the end, she was just another piece on the board. When the door closed behind her, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. The game was over, and this time I had won. I wasn't the same man who had walked into an empty house weeks ago. That man had been broken. But now I was something else entirely. And I was finally free.